Hey, what's going on everyone? I'm Bricko, and it's finally time for another character tier list. Yet again, I'm going to be ranking every single currently unlockable character in LEGO Legacy. Now, I generally try to keep these tier lists as simple as possible with just 5 different tiers, but because of that, some characters in any given tier may be better than others in there as well. So I'll try to mention that as we go along. Now, there are a couple new ones this time, and quite a few characters actually moved to a different tier, so I've gone ahead and added these little icons so that you can see where a character is ranked in comparison to the last time I did this list. So let's get started with the useless category. This one remained mostly the same from last time, except you'll notice that LeQuay has moved up a tier and Zombie has moved down to take his place. Zombie is really not that great of a character. I mean, he was an unboxed event, so you can't even get tiles for him right now, and even if you could, he's not amazing. Even at 7 stars, he doesn't do a lot of damage, he can't taunt, nothing like that. The only interesting thing about his kit is that he can revive himself, but that's only a one-time revive, so it's really not that effective. I think if there was a way for him to revive multiple times, he could be effective, but right now, he is not. Both Dwayne and Kelvin here are space characters, which means that they are required for the Gorwell's Great Escape event that runs weekly. Now, it might seem like a smart idea to farm these characters for that event, but it doesn't really start giving out good rewards until you get to the much later tiers where you need 5, 6, 7-star space characters. And at that point, it's not really worth it to invest in space that much because they are really not that great of a faction outside of that one event. With that said though, the devs have confirmed that the first raid in LEGO Legacy is going to be related to space, and space character reworks are going to come along with that. So it is likely that these characters will get better before too long. And then the other 3 characters here are probably the 3 worst characters in the entire game: Miner Clay, Iggy, and Hot Dog Guy. I mean, Iggy will actually inflict debuffs on himself, so yeah, just completely ignore these characters. Moving to the bronze category now, the 3 characters here at the top, which are probably the 3 best in this tier, Headley, LeQuay, and Darwin, are all here for the same reason. None of these characters are great by themselves, except maybe for Darwin, he can be decent, but other than that, these 3 characters aren't good. However, they do have tags that make them useful. For example, Headley has the King's Court tag, so he is a good one to farm if you want Primo, because for Officer Primo, I've mentioned this before, but you need 5 castle characters and a castle set at 5 stars to unlock Officer Primo. So if you do want him, it can be really smart and almost necessary to farm Headley for that event. But other than that, you're not really going to find much use for him. And then Darwin and LeQuay, these 2 characters, again, not amazing. They're not going to be in your late game pirate team, but they are really, really useful for the gold event, especially early on. But eventually, you are going to want to swap these guys out for better pirates. 5 new pirates are actually coming into the game here very shortly, and 1 is already here. There's Hank, Scarlet, the 2 Imperials, as well as Admiral Nonsuch. So there's going to be a lot of pirates to choose from, and I don't think Darwin and LeQuay will end up being at the top of your priority list for pirates. Kartovsky is still as useless as he was. He's actually now one of the hardest farms in the entire game, which is really weird. He's only accessible from the Master Shop, and if you're going to buy anyone from that shop, it should be Willa, who we're going to talk about here in just a second. But the only really good thing about Kartovsky is he does have an AoE ability where he can remove stealth. So that's decent, but other than that, his kit is pretty bad. I don't think we'll be finding a use for him for quite some time. Poppy here is one of the worst healers in the game. She's not absolutely useless, so that's why she's in the bronze category, but she's still not going to be a character that you're going to want to invest resources into. Some people do say that she's a solid early game healer for Pip 10 United, but in my opinion, the best early game builder healer is Fitness Instructor. So if you're debating between the 2 of them, then definitely choose Fitness Instructor instead of Poppy. And then finally here is Chicken Suit Guy, who is a fantastic character early on. He's going to be one of your best damage dealers, but once you get to around level 30, his damage really stops increasing and he becomes one of the worst attackers in the entire game. So go ahead and invest some resources into him early on, but once you get to around level 30, try to replace him with someone else. Now, one character that you might have noticed that is no longer in this tier is Nia, and she has moved up to the silver tier. Now, she is still not an amazing character. She's definitely decent, and she's way better than she used to be, but she's still not a top tier character. I think she has potential to become much better once Jay enters the game. She already has some synergy with him in her passive ability, and he might have some with her as well. I think if he's a tank, it might be pretty effective, since she can actually heal Jay with her passive, so that could be a really interesting interaction there. But as it stands, she's just decent. Then there is Verta here, who is actually a good damage dealer, especially at 7 stars. She is one that you're pretty much going to have to farm to at least 5 for Officer Primo, but she's probably not going to find a spot in your late game castle team. Spooky Girl also has some pretty solid damage, but she's really missing the supporting cast of spooky characters to go around her and make her more effective, similar to Zombie. Those two both have quite a bit of potential. Argenta is here as well, and she is a really good character in a full Buccaneer team. That is where she is really going to shine, and she is a necessary farm if you want to do well in the gold event. Then we have Commander Cold. He is a mid-tier space character. He's a solid support unit, but for some reason, he is one of the hardest farms in the game. He's only available from 2 20 energy hard nodes, so he's going to be a very slow farm. I'm hoping that he will eventually get moved to somewhere that's a bit more accessible because he's not exactly a top tier character. 2 characters that I have moved up from bronze last time are Street Sweeper Sal and Crook Chuck. Now these 2 can actually be quite effective with the Ice Glider set, since every time they gain a buff, they're also going to recover some health, and Sal especially will gain a lot of buffs, so he's going to have a lot of healing, and he actually becomes a somewhat decent tank. Still not top tier, but they both fit comfortably into silver. And then we also have Chef and Businessman Trent. Chef is a decent healer, not quite as good as Hiker, but much better than Poppy, and he also has an interesting ability where he can remove a bunch of pep, which we might find some use for in a raid setting, but that is still to be determined. And then Trent is another mid-tier attacker. He does have some decent damage, similar to Verta and Spooky Girl, but I think a couple city reworks are needed for him and a lot of other city characters for their faction to really start to shine. I think they have a lot of potential, but they're still missing a couple key elements to really make them effective. And then at the bottom of this tier is Cactus Suit Girl, who used to be a much better character. Some would argue that she was the best character in the entire game. She had quite a bit of damage. She could counterattack pretty regularly. She could apply tons of damage over time effects. But since then, she has been nerfed quite heavily twice, so she's not quite as effective as she used to be. After that is the gold tier, and yep, I did decide to move Lloyd down from platinum. I think once Wu is in the game, those 2 together will deserve to be in the platinum tier, but Lloyd by himself lost a lot of plug-and-play viability. He no longer works in teams like Pirates and Castle as well as he used to, and now he's going to be quite dependent on Wu to really make him effective. And next to him are the other 2 main Ninjago characters, Zane and Kai. Again, they will get massive boosts when paired with Wu. There's a lot of synergies that won't happen without him, so I think when he does come to the game and you can put him in a Ninjago team, every character is going to become way better. By the way, Kai is actually now one of the top 5 attackers in the entire game. His ultimate is now one of the better ultimates. It can do quite a bit of damage, and then it will also grant your team prepared and attack up. Both helpful buffs. It will just ensure that your next attacks will do even more damage as well. Then we have 3 King's Court heroes, or should I say 3 Castle heroes. Let's first talk about the new addition here, Will the Witch. Now, she is the other Master Shop farm that I mentioned earlier. If you don't already know, basically the way the Master Shop works is if you already have a character at 7 stars and you get a couple extra tiles for them, they will be converted into Master Shop currency. Now, unfortunately, the conversion rate is pretty terrible, so you basically end up needing 17,600 extra character tiles just to take Willa to 7 stars. So she's going to be a very, very slow farm, but I actually do recommend that you start working towards her because you're going to have to do it eventually, so you might as well start now. Willa is a pretty solid castle character by herself. I don't think she's quite platinum tier. I think once Basil comes into the game, those two together, similar to Lloyd and Wu, are definitely going to be platinum. And honestly, I'm worried for when Basil's going to come into the game, because all the synergies between those two are going to make the team almost impossible to defeat, especially if you pair them with the existing King's Court trio. I'm not really sure how you would ever beat that in Arena. But yeah, she does have a really good heal and some interesting abilities, but she's really going to shine once Basil enters the game. To her left is King Brutus and Princess Storm. King Brutus is still in this tier. I will mention that his AI got a bit of a fix in the last update, so instead of him giving his taunt to whoever was in the last slot, he will now give it to the healthiest ally, which I think is pretty smart and makes him more effective. With that said, though, I still don't think he should be a top choice for you when forming a solid castle team. Generally, if you're trying to go castle, you're going to want the King's Court trio of Magisto, Jester, Burnibus, and then 2 other non-castle characters, maybe a couple pirates, or even a reviver like Aurora or a Yuppie. Princess Storm also found her way up into this tier. Now, as I've mentioned before, my biggest problem with her is that she is a great attacker, but she also taunts for some reason. I think if she didn't taunt, she would be way, way better, since the King's Court team already has enough taunts going on as it is. But the other thing is she does not have the King's Court tag, so she will lose some synergies with Magisto and Burnibus and whatnot. But as long as you don't upgrade her taunt ability and you keep it at a low duration, don't increase it all the way to a 3-turn taunt. If you keep it low, I think she would actually be a somewhat viable character. And then we have 2 pirates, Bart and Valiant. Pirates have definitely seen more action recently in Arena, especially with the release of Scarlet. The current meta right now is definitely a castle pirate mix, so it's good to have more than one team as the meta. But yeah, if you're going to run a solid pirate team, Bart is essential. He has the best single target heal in the entire game, and it's only a 2-turn cooldown, so he is definitely necessary. Valiant, on the other hand, not so much, but I do highly recommend him. I think he might possibly get phased out when Hank comes into the game, but honestly, I really like the double taunt of Valiant and Scarlet, so my best guess is that Hank will probably replace Argenta in a full pirate team. Then there is Officer Primo, who I've mentioned a couple times now. It is a bit difficult to gauge his viability, because currently we can't get him higher than 5 stars. He unlocks at 5, and that's what you get him at from the Master Event, which, by the way, I'm finally ready for, so that's great. I hope it does return soon. They haven't mentioned it at all, so it still might be a few months out. But anyway, yeah, I think if we could take him to 7 stars, he would no doubt be in the gold tier. His kit is just all around pretty good, nothing too crazy, but I think he would give a really nice boost to the existing city team, which again, I think has a lot of potential. Then there is Reed and Locust, who are 2 of the better space characters in the game. Reed tends to be a bit underrated. His stun is fantastic and especially useful in the Glyph Hunt campaign, and I highly recommend using Reed if you're struggling in any of those battles. And then Locust is a really solid tank and also useful for the Glyph Hunt campaign. These 2 probably won't find a spot in your arena team, but they are decent in other areas of the game. And then they are needed for that space event, and again, I don't think it's worth investing too heavily in them exclusively for that. After that is Demolition Dummy, who has one of the best AoE attacks in the game, but it does damage himself, so if you pair him with a reviver like Aurora, he can keep coming back and doing that massive hit. Then we've got Hiker, who is at the upper end of this gold tier. He's one of the best AoE healers in the entire game, and he's also a relatively easy farm, available from Monolith Waste. So he's definitely worth the investment and useful in multiple areas of the game, including early game arena and occasionally late game arena, but also Glyph Hunt and Monolith Waste campaigns. And then he's also used for a couple events as well. Speaking of healers, right next to him is Fitness Instructor, who is one of the most underrated characters in the game, in my opinion. She has a heal, which is decent. It's not incredible, but it's better than a lot of other healers. And she can also give attack up and crit chance up to the team, which will just boost your overall damage output. I would not say that she's better than Hiker, but she is one of the better healers in the game. And then finally is Yeti, whose event just ended. He is one of those tank attacker combos that doesn't do either especially well. His max health when at 7 stars is only 11,000, so he's not going to be tanking a lot of hits. And then on top of that, his attack stat is only 1900 at 7 stars, so he's not going to do a lot of damage either. He does have that chance to do a double hit, but I still don't think we're going to really find a place for him in the meta for quite some time unless a chill team becomes more prevalent. And now finally we can move on to the Platinum tier. First of all, you'll notice that there are 4 new additions to Platinum this time, and we're going to go over each one. So let's start at the top here with Magisto, Jester, and Burnibus. This is the King's Court trio, one of the most powerful and annoying groups of characters in the entire game. They work so well together primarily because of their passive abilities. Magisto's passive will give extra speed and will heal allies when they counterattack. Burnibus gains counterattack chance with his passive, which will heal him up because of Magisto. And then, of course, Jester will heal allies whenever he is damaged, so even more healing. Basically, they're just super difficult to beat, and it leads to a lot of timeouts in Arena. So basically, they're a defensive powerhouse. Then we have Redbeard and Scarlet. Redbeard is just an amazing character. He is disarmed on basic, a cleanse, a stun, and a very powerful ult. And he can counterattack when other pirates are hit as well. Just overall, he's one of the best characters in the game. And then Scarlet here is a new pirate that was just recently added as an Unboxed event, and she is much more powerful than we initially anticipated. She has the highest base defense in the entire game, and she will taunt whenever an ally falls below 50% health. So pair her with a healer like Bart that can keep her alive, and you'll give a huge boost to your team. And then we have Gorwell, who has also moved up here from Gold. She is one of the best support units in the game. She can heal allies and call assists, and she can also give out the status effect called Infestation, which will grant the ally plus 2% speed and attack per stack, which will help your team get out before the opponents and do a lot more damage. All around, a great character. Then we have the 2 revivers, Aurora and Yuppie. These 2 are fantastic plug-and-play characters. You can put them in just about any team and it will take it to the next level. Yuppie especially, since Aurora generally needs to be with the Ice Glider to really work well, and she is a bit bugged right now. And then Yuppie also has the only mass assist in the game, which can help to quickly eliminate enemies. And then finally we have the 2 best damage dealers in the entire game, Highwayman and Firefighter Ash. Highwayman is definitely the better between the 2 since he doesn't rely on tanks to get his damage, and he can hide under stealth for most of the battle, making him often the last unit standing. But that's not to say that Ash is bad, because she certainly isn't. But she is also an Arena Store farm, so if choosing between the 2, you'll probably want to go for Highwayman. Alright, well that's going to do it for this tier list video. By the way, thank you guys for being so patient with me over this last week. I haven't been uploading very much, and that's for 2 main reasons. One, because this video took longer to make than I thought it would. I had to completely redo the graphic with the new character icons. And 2, because I try to make sure that all of my videos have some kind of substance and they're not about nothing. And unfortunately, right now there's a lot of nothing going on in-game. Hopefully we're going to get Brickspedition here soon and content will start to flow, but right now we're definitely in a bit of a lull. So hopefully this game will really start to pick up in the next month, but until then, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.